ko and thank you for reading.
Manny Pacquiao, the gold, I don't think there'll be a problem for Manny.
As his share of great fights. But every once in a while, the mind can also be considered for muscle.
Only here para sa bayan. And that's the opening bell for Round by Round, presented by Eastern Communications. Mabuhay Pilipinas, mabuhay world. I'm Boyet Sison.
And I'm Ryan Sangalia. Dennis Principe joins us later on in the show.
For our first segment, it is our four-rounder, wherein we bring you the news from the world of boxing. Ryan, start it off.
Sure. Romero Duno wins in Miami. The popular lightweight from Cotabato City stopped Ramon Esperanza in one round this past Friday to end a 17-month layoff. Promoter JC Monanquil tells me Duno will be back in action next month in Miami.
And as far as Mark Magsayo's opponent, he has been released from the hospital after a 10th round knockout loss. Julio Ceja suffered an orbital bone fracture, but thankfully did not suffer a brain bleed. Promoter Sean Gibbons of MP Promotion says Magsayo will likely be back in the ring by November.
And Freddie Roach has called on Manny Pacquiao to retire after his upset loss to Yordenis Ugas this past weekend.
Now, for Pacquiao, he has also hinted that he is considering retiring, but the 42-year-old boxer says he wants to take time to consider his options. Ryan?
You know, boy, that's a big statement by Freddie Roach there. We've heard Freddie suggest in the past that maybe it's time, but this is, I think, the strongest that he's ever not just hinted at it, but kind of come out and said, you know, Manny, that time has come. And, you know, they've been together for 20 years. When Manny Pacquiao was looking for a home outside of the Philippines to train at, and he walked into the Wild Card Boxing Club, you know, which was really not the household name in boxing that it is now. And these two basically joined up together and embarked on a Hall of Fame career for each of them. You know, Freddie's already in the Hall of Fame, and, you know, and Pacquiao is heading there very soon. You have to believe that Freddie Roach saying it this way after such a loss really is going to have an impact on Manny Pacquiao, right, boy?
You know, you hit the nail on the head, because remember, I mean, going back in history, you already mentioned that the relationship is really very, very strong and very, very long. You had a teenage Manny Pacquiao being able to ride on an intercontinental flight for the first time in his life to go to the United States, and he gets to land up in the Wild Card Gym as a 22-year-old at that time. And being able to be under the tutelage of a Freddie Roach at that time was also trying to establish his name. So you had two individuals who were trying to recarve their niche in the world of boxing. One person in the person of Pacquiao was not very close to his father, right? Not very close to his father, was looking for a very good father figure to guide him along the way. And here is Freddie Roach, who also was in need of an emotional attachment and found it in Pacquiao. So that bond really got them to be very close, got them to be very emotionally attached to each other, which eventually augured well for the both of them, which eventually resulted in all of this success through the decades. And what a lot of decades it has been, Ryan.
Yeah, it's really been an amazing ride. And when you think of it, it's, you know, all these factors had to come together in order for them to unite. And, you know, I even remember the story of Freddie Roach talking about the first time he noticed. He heard Pacquiao punch, he felt Pacquiao punch on the mitts, and he heard the sound. He's like, oh my goodness, like, where's this kid from, right? These two were the perfect people to come together to make this magic that they have. Manny Pacquiao, you know, Freddie Roach said, you know, Pacquiao probably would have still been a great fighter, you know, without Freddie, but it was the combination of Freddie's understanding of boxing, the philosophy. Freddie Roach has said, he believes all fights should end in knockouts. There should never be like decisions, and that's the way that Manny Pacquiao fought. So when you have two people, who have that same mentality and they come together, you could really go somewhere. And Freddie is a technical boxing guy. Freddie learned under the tutelage of Eddie Futch. So yeah, no, he brings that lineage of these decades of wisdom, to Manny Pacquiao. Because when you talk about Eddie Futch, you talk about the guy who is trained so many of the great boxers in history. You're talking about one of the top 5 greatest trainers. That's where Freddie Roach learned from. So, but that bond that they have, that's why when Freddie Roach says something, Manny Pacquiao listens. Now, we're not kidding ourselves. Manny Pacquiao does what Manny Pacquiao wants, right? But when you're talking about a great athlete, that kind of competitiveness will not allow them to walk away on terms either than their own. But listening to Pacquiao in the post-fight press conference, you get the feeling that he understands. Like, there was a look on Manny's face before the 12th round that really was telling for me. Like, he had that look on his face. It wasn't like, okay, I know I'm behind, but I'm going to bang the gloves. I'm going to go out there and do what I have to do and knock this guy out. Something's wrong. Something's different.
It seems, taking off from what you're saying, his mind was trying to tell his body something already.
Yeah.
His mind was trying, he was trying to psychologically condition his mind for his body to follow. But, well, unfortunately, it was not to be. But yeah, go ahead.
There's a Wallflowers lyric like that. I don't remember that song, One Headlight. I turn the engine, but the engine doesn't turn. That's what Manny Pacquiao, I think, was experiencing there. It was like, hey, I got to go to work right now, but hey, why is it my
engine doesn't want to work? I'm trying to put the pedal onto the metal, but it doesn't want to pump out what I wanted to pump out. Ryan, let me just move a little, fast forward a little bit. So, what are we looking at now? With a lot of clamor for him to just make a graceful exit at this point already, or does he really go for the other side of the coin, wherein have a swan song, Manny? Let's have one more fight, just to reminisce about the good old times, for you to go out in a blaze of glory. What would be more fitting, or what would be more possible, considering that there is a possibility of a presidential run by May of 2022?
I probably not the person to ask regarding what the laws are, about fighting so close to an election, but you have to feel like, all right, Manny's going to want to do something to raise his profile. Now, Manny's good at getting out there and talking to voters, and he knows how to connect with people. That's the one thing. Manny Pacquiao is really, we say this a lot, and it kind of becomes just a cliche, but he's really a man of the people. Like, I remember hearing about him going to Qatar for the World Championships and amateur boxing World Championships, and not having security around him, like just allowing everyone to come up to him and say hello to him. Because in Qatar there's a lot of Filipinos, and Manny Pacquiao,
it's public relations. It's simply public relations.
He's really good at that. Like,
he's really good at it, right?
Like, so Manny but there's no greater platform for him to get his popularity out there than fighting. So you have to say that, all right, if he really wants to run for higher office, and we're talking about, like, he hasn't declared yet, he says he'll do that in the next month or so, but president or vice president, whether he runs for either of those things, it's going to be to his benefit if he does fight again. And it's going to be to his benefit if he wins again. It's hard to, people won't like a winner, not saying that Manny Pacquiao, is anything but a winner, but he's always been a winner in his life. But they want to see that big, like, if he would have fought Errol Spence and he would have beaten him, as crazy as it is, because I've covered politics, I've never had to say this about anyone else, that may have moved the needle a bit, so because there's that nationalism, there's that patriotism that comes with Manny Pacquiao's fights. Like, I would never say that about, New York Senator Chuck Schumer. He's got a big, tough reelection coming up. He better go fight Bill Bradley. You know, you would never say that. So Manny Pacquiao's the rules are different with Manny Pacquiao. So I think it would be important for him. Like, you know, he could do a fight in the Philippines.
Right.
You know, obviously
that would be the most ideal scenario for him to fight in the Philippines, and eventually, if he does decide that will be his last, that'll be the great swan song. I hate to cut this discussion short, Ryan, but we still have another segment to do before we turn it over to our good friend Dennis Principe. But in the meantime, ladies and gentlemen, that's today's 4-rounder. You're still watching Round by Round. Now we go to our fearless forecast for this week, and Ryan Sogdalia has chosen what?
Well, I have chosen Jake Paul against Tyron Woodley. And now we say chosen because this is a very light boxing weekend, and you know that's coming up this Sunday. That's a Showtime pay-per-view. I'm going to give you my fearless forecast, all right?
Go!
And I'm fearless in this because Jake Paul is going to knock out Tyron Woodley. And I say that because Jake Paul is fighting Tyron Woodley. Because, man, Jake Paul is taking this fight.
Just to give everybody a background, Tyron Woodley is a mixed martial arts fighter.
Yes.
All right? Mixed martial arts fighter. Okay?
Jake Paul is fight, you know,
mixed martial arts fight. Now he cannot use his legs. He cannot throw he cannot throw his opponent to the ground. He just has to use his mitts. In the case of Jake Paul, having already beaten 3 other individuals in the past, but hey, not a professional boxer by profession, but has been getting a lot of attention because of all of these celebrity matchups that he's been getting. But okay, going back to your fearless forecast, Mr. Songgalia, really, Jake Paul? Really, Jake Paul will knock out Paul Woodley?
Because why else would he have picked this guy? You know, Jake Paul doesn't take fights to lose, so he has seen enough of Tyron Woodley striking to know, okay, yeah, this is a sure thing. This is I'm gonna look like such a tough guy because I knocked out a guy competing in another sport, a guy who's taking the fight because of, he needs a payday. And I beat a UFC champion. Look at me, I'm great. When you go on BoxRec and you go on like the records, there's no asterisk.
There's no asterisk, right?
Every one of these wins should have an asterisk for Jake Paul because these are.
But let me ask you this: should fights of this nature really get attention that it has been getting, and getting the money that it has been getting, considering that for boxing purists all over the world, they are frowning on stuff like this?
Well, pro boxing is, free market capitalism on steroids, and it's, the supply and demand. And there's, in a perfect world, the best fights would have the highest demand, but they don't. Right. A lot of times it's like, there are fights that I get excited about when I'm like, oh, I just want to see what happens, right? And that's the excitement. I don't expect Hagler Hearns, but I'm like, okay, I want to watch this matchup and find the conclusion. That's not the way it kind of works with Jake Paul and to an extent his brother Logan Paul as well. They're popular. They are. We've gotten used to in this world, the concept of being famous for being famous, right? Like, these guys are the Kim Kardashians of boxing. So they
really?
They have yes,
you are comparing them to the Kardashians. All right.
That's who they are. Sorry. Here's the thing. We're talking about them as fighters. Can you tell me what they're famous for? Exactly. Like they have a big YouTube following. They do pranks. I think I don't know. They're professional. I've heard this. They're professional trolls, and I felt like I was being trolled. I went to the Floyd Mayweather fight. I'm sorry, the Floyd Mayweather exhibition at Logan Paul in Miami, and I'm sitting there in the post-fight press conference, and this guy is sitting there. Logan Paul is sitting up on the dais, like answering questions about who he's going to fight next, and what does he think about fighting this guy? And he looks like he's Larry Holmes up there after.
What did you think about the media people who were asking him these questions, making it sound as if he was legit?
I thought I was in an SNL skit, right? I'm sitting there and he's talking like serious, like, yeah, I don't know. I just, I did my best against Floyd Mayweather. I gave everything, and maybe I'm going to ride onto the sunset. I'm like, what are we doing here? This is insane. Like, this wasn't a boxing fight,
This is an exhibition. They're just making money out of us, and we're enabling them.
Yes, it is. And like, I'm like, I have a master's degree and I'm sitting here like listening to this stuff here. Like, I wanted to stand up and say, does anyone think this is stupid? I think this is stupid. Who's with me? I'm going. I'm going to beat the traffic. But these guys, they move the needle. That's all that matters in boxing. That's all that matters.
You're right. They've moved the needle, and he has done it 3 times. It's going to do it a 4th time, and maybe even the 5th time. But what are we looking for? All the other people who like Jake Paul have been exploiting the system, have been exploiting the viewing public, and for some, hey, don't stop them. It's plain simply entertainment.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Showtime sports head Steven Espinosa has said, listen, if you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. So that's sort of, they're not trying to push this as this is real boxing. This is this has nothing to do with the competitive storylines that kind of push the sport forward. This is simply, hey, these guys move the needle. One thing I'm going to give Jake Paul credit for, right, is he is giving a spotlight to some of the fighters who are sort of overlooked. And I feel like, yeah, it's good that he's doing this, but it also kind of feels like trolling in another way, because he's exposing, some of the shortcomings of professional boxing. Like Amanda Serrano, who is one of the greatest women's boxers of all time, she's the co-feature. There's going to be a lot of eyes on this, and he's not just putting her in that spot. He's been training with her. He's been, being seen with her in a way that gives her a lot of exposure.
So there's a little bit of redemption or a redeeming factor to the entire card, because you have a legitimate women's boxing match that'll be featured in the card. So there'll be a lot of eyes who will be looking forward to that as well.
I don't know if I want to say it's redeeming because it's still Jake Paul, but
I'm trying to be kind. I'm just trying to be kind.
I appreciate your diplomacy, but it's like yeah, I don't know about that, but I'll say this though. He is putting Amanda Serrano, a female boxer who has in a lot of ways been without peer in a prominent spot, and this is not unlike Mike Tyson, how Mike Tyson had, Christy Martin on those cards in the 90s, and Christy Martin really had an opportunity to shine, and she became a star, and that's why, we have women's boxing to the extent that we do these days. So I think that that's great, but at the same time, it's like, all right, we know what we're watching. We're not watching, okay, Jake Paul has to get past Tyron Woodley because we need to figure out this division. We need to figure out who is the real best fighter here. We got a guy who's like at a Disney show who showed up to like the announcement of this fight wearing, I think it was Mickey Mouse all over. Like it was a bodysuit with Mickey Mouse all over it, and he's saying, "Hey, you're gonna get beat up by a guy who was from Disney." So that's what we're looking at. We're not. This is not Marvin Hagler cementing his legacy. This is it's a Sunday morning cartoon. That's what we're watching.
Well, before Ryan and I start discussing cartoons, we'll cut it off at that, because if ever we get to continue, we might be discussing a fight between Jake Paul and maybe the Big Bad Wolf. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, that was the Eastern Communications Fearless Forecast. You're still watching Round by Round, and we now turn it over to our good friend, Dennis Principe.
And you're watching Round by Round. Ako po si Dennis Principe, and we are so honored. Maswerte po tayo dahil makakasama po natin. Ngayon kumpare ko na, pero dati talagang idol ko to. Hanggang ngayon, tinitingala pa rin po natin ang isa sa dalawang magkapatid na natatanging two-division world champion. Parehong kaibigan ko yan. Pero mas kaibigan ko to. Jerry Peñalosa. Paring Jerry, magandang araw sa iyo at welcome sa ating program.
Pare, magandang araw at sa lahat ng mga nanonood ngayon sa round by round, sa kumpare ko, Mr. Dennis Principe. Magandang umaga at maraming salamat po sa lahat.
Okay. Alam mo, pre, sa napaka bait mo no na tao na lahat na pagka may interview sa iyo, pinagbibigyan mo lahat na ikwento mo na, no? From paano ka nagsimula, paano nagtapos, di ba? Pero alam mo ako, I will be talking to you as a fan mo, no? Kasi meron akong dalawang, para sa akin memorable, no, na ito yung mga laban na gustong-gusto kong panoorin, gustong-gusto kong ulitin, no? Ewan ko kung magugulat ka or what. Yung una, itong laban mo kay Yang Jucho, no, ng Korea, no?
Korea.
If meron man na body shot na talagang gustong-gusto ko, yung ginawa mong body shot sa kanya, no? Pero bago yun, ano, ito yung perhaps, ewan ko kung tama ako, no? Ito yung lang yung laban, o unang laban na nakatikim ka ng knockdown.
Tama. Tama, ano yun, parang nakikita ko parang lesson learned experience. Yung alam mo yun na gigil na since nakuha ka natin yung unang round. So parang nanggigil na gusto tapusin ka agad. Without knowing na naging erratic pala yung dating. Yun, tinamahan din tayo. Boom!
Ano ba yung tumama ron, pare?
Sa bayan kami, alam ko, tinamaan ako ng parang right hook. Sabay kami ng parang yung right hook. Nagulat ako, dilim ng paningin ko. Saan kaya ako ngayon? Pero yun nga, dahil insayado rin tayo, so madali makarecover.
Ang pagkatapos ng round na yun, yun nga, pagtayo mo, nag-bell na, 1 minute yung rest, di ba? So, lumabas, naging sapat lang sa'yo 1 minute para totally makarecover o kinailangan mo pa na medyo mag-boxing yung second round?
Mas maganda sana kung mas mababa pa yung yung rest period. Pero yun ang rules 1 minute. So, ang ginawa ng mga corner naman ko, hindi na ako binigyan ng instruction. More lang, yung talang pang-recovery, wala na instruction. Ang ginawa nila like yung mga pangwala ng hilo, yung nuya, at saka talagang lahat ng katawan ko, parang giginising nila ako although gising na ako, pero hindi pa talaga 100%. But before the bell naman, nag-start yung next round, medyo nag-recover na ako. So, gusto natin gumanti. Kung lang iya ka, sige, ngayon medyo okay na ako. Babalikan kita.
Nakita natin, kahanga-hanga din yun yung performance si Yang Jucho. Dahil, alam mo, hanggang huli, talagang lahat na ng suntok, hinagis mo na sa kanya, tinanggap niya, katawan, mukha, di ba? Pero, sa tingin ko, ready rin, preparado rin yung kalabo mo.
Talagang insayado at talagang makikita natin bisa record niya talagang wala pang talo. So talagang pinagandaan nila, talagang magaling yung mga coaching staff nila kasi masasabi ko isa na ako sa marunong magbasa ng kalaban. Pero imagine, nababasa ako, tinamaan ako. Uy, galing nyo
Doon pa sa laban, I'm sure, or most likely, iniisip mo kailangan mo ma-knockout. Kasi, syempre, alam naman natin, mahirap yung judging, hometown, di ba? Yung ba nasa isip mo yun, na pwede ka madisgrasya doon sa scoring kahit na binubugbog mo siya, na knockdown ka ng first round. Can you still recall na noong time na yun, parang iniisip mo rin pwede kang madali sa scorecards?
So yung nag-bill na yung nag-start na yung bill, sabi ko sa sarili ko, mahirap manalo dito ng close fight. So kailangan ko talagang kung anong pwedeng gawin sa iyo na hindi ito makaabot ng schedule 12 round, gagawin ko. Kaya lahat na yata ng mga mayroong lakas ko binuhos ko, ang tagal pa naman ang tagal bumagsak, langya ka. Sana matulog.
Pero nakita ko yung dulo, tinapos mo sa katawan. Alam mo, yun ang isa sa mga pinaka-paborito kong diga sa katawan. No? Yung binigay mo, actually tatlo yun eh, no? Yung dalawa tumama, yung panghuli medyo, ewan ko, parang nakalampas pa eh, no? Talaga bang
Tama.
nakita mo na sa katawan mo siya makukuha?
Medyo partly, kasalanan ko yun kasi in between rounds, lalo na yung tinamaan ako. Sabi ng mga, yung especially yung tatay ko, sa yung kasama ko, yung mga kapatid ko na gustong mag-relax muna yung next round kasi gusto tayong para fully recovered talaga. Although sabi nila may ano pa 12 round. So yung next round okay lang kasi marami mahaba-haba pa eh. So wag ka magpatalo pero wag mag-ingat. Gusto na talaga alam ko gusto lang yung magipagsabayan ako. Yung ano na talaga yung freeze na fully recovered na at least pantay kami. So ang ginawa ko parang gusto kong gumanti. So nanggigigil ako. So hindi ko na parang ang alam ko gusto nila kukunin mo sa katawan dahil ang tigas ng kapal ng mukha nito hindi bumabagsak sa mukha. So daanan mo sa katawan. Ako naman kasi medyo gigil nga gusto makabawi agad. Lahat puro sa taas, sa taas, taas. Nung magtagal-tagal. So parang naisip ko kaya nga parang nagtibay naman ito. I-try ka natin sa katawan at tama-tama, i-remind ako lagi ng mga careerman ko. Sige nga, i-pick ko sa taas ito. Tama-tama, yung depensa niya. Tinaas niya yung depensa niya. Yun, ito na yun lang yaka. So at least nanalo pa rin. So pero hindi ganun kadali.
Now, parang Jerry, isa rin sa pinaka-paborito ko and ako hindi ako magugulat ko, isa rin sa mga pinaka-paborito mo to, no? Yung panalo mo kay Johnny Gonzalez. Just like kay Young Jucho, katawan din ang binanat mo at sa official scores, lamang na lamang si Johnny Gonzalez. Una-una, tama ba yung scoring yun na talagang lamang siya dun sa laban na yun bago mo siya napabagsak?
First of all, Johnny Gonzalez bata ng Golden Boy. So hindi ko na-expect na yun na close pag mga close round parang for sure bigyan na yun kasi alaga nila si Johnny Gonzalez talagang kasi talagang inaalagaan nila kasi sila yun nga looking forward sila na sa mga next fight noon bata pa at that time ako about to retire na. So, of course naintindihan ko. So mga close round, talagang kanila yun. Although alam ko na medyo behind talaga. So, pero Johnny Gonzalez kasi before the fight or weigh-in time, nakikita ko siya na parang green siya eh. So, kasi nung nag-weigh-in kami, I think a week before, nakikita ko siya na tumatakbo. Parang kalaki ko, paano siya makakuha ng 118? Ibig sabihin, sa weigh-in time, baka iskeleto na ito. Baka buto-buto na lang ito. I don't think makarecover ito agad. So, nung nag-weigh-in time, nakita ko siya, yung drain, alam mo yung talaga, parang lalim ng mata nito, parang butong-buto na ito. So, for sure, based on my experience, kasi dumanin ako ng mga Jubranjeta, sobrang reduced, na maka-epekto yun sa mga later rounds na eh. So, parang ginawa ko yung part ng strategy na, for sure, pag bitiw ito na suntok sa mga early rounds, so late rounds, mapapagod na to. Dahil
Pero yung patama mo na yun sa katawan, talagang sukat na sukat mo. May buhos pa talaga yun nung time na yun. Kasi nung nakita ko, delayed reaction pa yung bagsak niya eh.
Talagang yun, talagang sukat yun kasi mahaba ang kamay niya eh. Kailangan kong palampasin yung kamay niya eh para makaabot tayo eh. So kasi pag magipagsabayan ako or mag-distance ako, siya makaabot sa akin or tatama sa akin, ako hindi. Kasi mas shorter yung yung arms ko compare sa kanya eh. So kailangan kong palampasin yung suntok niya at makapasok. Kaya salubungin ko siya eh. Kailangan hayaan ko siya magkamali, yun nga, sabi ko, magkamali ka, babayaran mo yun. Ayun, nung naging careless siya, patulan siya ng bato, ako naman, talagang matagal na inantay yung ganung pagkakataon. Nandun na, talagang, ito na yun, ito na yun. Boom! Uy, yun. Na-feel ko, or narinig ko, parang iba yung tama. Parang, uy, ikaw muna. Tatayo ka ba? Hindi tumayo sabi ko, uy, siyempre, ano yun, isa sa mga memorable ko na fight. Kung hindi man yun, talagang isa sa pinaka-memorable na fight. Yun nga, ano na tayo, behind ng puntos, underdog tayo, sa dami ng mga Pilipino nanonood. So, yun, parang para tayong para tayong askal ilagay sa taas ng ring. Walang pili to, kagatin kahit sino nasa harap.
Alright, parin Jerry,
Yun.
maraming salamat. Maraming salamat sa time mo sa amin at until next time sa pagkikita natin.
Maraming salamat. Isang malaking karangalan. Imagine, Mr. Dennis Pacific. Kaibigan ko yan, kumpare ko yan. Nasa kabilang linya. Pare, maraming salamat. Ingat pa rin tayo. Dito pa rin yung COVID.
And that was former WBC Super Flyweight Champion and WBO Bantamweight Kingpin, Jerry Peñalosa. And back to our main host.
Thank you very much, Dennis. And now we're about to end the show, ladies and gentlemen. And what a wonderful discussion that we had today. And we will have a lot more of that in the succeeding days to come. And that's the final bell for today's episode of Round by Round, presented by Eastern Communications. I'm Boyet Sison.
And I'm Ryan Sangalia. We're on Facebook at 6 p.m. Monday through Friday, and on our YouTube channel right after. Like, follow, share, and subscribe now.
For tomorrow's edition of the show, it'll be Bill Velasco and is it gonna be you? Yes, it's gonna be you, Ryan Sangalia.
Again? Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
again, you again, Ryan Sangalia, and they will be joined by yours truly to do a special report. Catch us again tomorrow on Round by Round. Thank you for watching. See you soon.